Yo, I'm Mat4yo, and this is Chisel This. Welcome back. It's a brand new studio, and if you haven't noticed, I just received a small gift from Mrs. 4yo. But enough about my studio. Let's take a trip to the laundromat, 4yo, where we leave your clothes high, dry, gone.
We leave them out like the laundry, high, dry, gone. Who gon' leave them out to dry? This guy. Stay high, but you know I'm not.
I was so excited to get tapped by Cam to play Hydreigon in the latest pseudo-legendary cipher, specifically because of how I used his name at the end of my Pokemon Trainer cipher verse as Hilbert. It was an obtuse line, even for me. That was like really the first major cipher verse that we had written in this new phase of ciphers. And I don't even think I might have written it today because of how I've kind of evolved as a cipher writer. You know, it's not urgently related to Hilbert, but I think that's part of the charm of it, that I pulled something from the greater black and white universe and I just twisted it in a way that people seem to resonate with. So it was never a question on how I would start my verse for this cipher. I had to reference it, but this time I said the Pokemon's name in the reverse order, gone dry high. So many of you did catch it in the comments, and that made me really happy. And I think if you put the verses back to back, this one sort of acts as a direct sequel. So it was back in the middle of May when Cam first sent me the beat and gave me the opportunity to write my verse. So I start off by making a short list of things that I know I like to reference. These can be literal references like the Pokemon's moves, its appearance. It can be wordplay references, so using the Pokemon's name or the moves as puns and things like that. It can be external references, so drawing a parallel between the Pokemon character and something outside of the universe that can catch your attention or even catch you off guard. And then there's poetic references. There's ways that you can build a world surrounding the character, and I did this when I brought in the whole religious themes and I mentioned the Garden of Gethsemane, and we'll get there later. So one of the things I wanted to reference first is that Hydreigon is a dark and dragon type that can fly, but clearly is not a flying type. In fact, its ability is levitate, and so that gave me an opportunity to play around with the high, dry, gone. And the next part is kind of an example of a line that is begetted by the previous line and the line that comes after it, but wouldn't necessarily have existed on its own, right? So it's kind of a bridge between lines. It transitions between talking about his Pokemon type into the other punchline that I had pre-written for this, which is,
Man, things come in threes and you don't want to hear these fists talk.
Now obviously Hydreigon has two mouths for hands. The other thing I knew I wanted to reference in this verse is that Hydreigon has three heads. Dino, as I like to call him, is a one-headed dragon, and his name includes the German word for one, eins. Zweilous is a two-headed dragon, and it includes the German word for two, zwei. And Hydreigon is the three-headed dragon, and its name includes the German word for three, drei. Eins, zwei, drei. So obviously, Pokemon baked that into the character, and it's my job to extract that and give it my own interpretation and connect it to other things that are famous for threes, such as the famous saying, bad things come in threes. So one of the other things that I had written down on my scratch sheet to reference was that how Hydreigon is a Pokemon that reaches its final form at the highest possible evolution level, being that Zweilous evolves into Hydreigon at level 64. No other Pokemon evolves at that high of a level. So I had written down here something, something, something. I like violence better. That's evolution at the highest level. But it sounds kind of generic, and I knew that I wanted to make things memorable and have them be specifically related to the character. And so much of that inclination comes from me watching other people's reactions to our cipher verses. Every single time a new cipher comes out, I watch the reactions to see where your face changes if I say a particular line, when you get excited if I switch something up, and also important to me is when I say something that I think will provoke a reaction and then it doesn't. And then I learn, well, if I said it a different way, maybe it would have clicked better. And so all of those things have built up over the last year or so into me having this mind for writing the cipher and thinking about how it will affect the listener first and foremost. Part of it comes from just writing cool lines and having a cool rhythm, but the other part comes from really drawing on the Pokemon's inspiration. And being such a massive Pokemon fan like I am, the whole pantheon of the franchise is well ingrained into my core, and I can draw from it without really having to look things up, which is where I got the reference to Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Gates to Infinity, where Hydreigon plays a major role in the game's story. And so it was very important for me to reference that, and I really liked how many people in the comments who are appreciators of that game were excited to see it finally being referenced after how many years, you know? Another thing I like to do when I write the ciphers is to go back in time and think about what I was doing or what Pokemon was doing at the time that that particular game came out. So I'm thinking back to Pokemon Black and White version. I'm trying to draw on these memories. And so I pick up my DS. Well, let me show you, because I have a section for this over here now. So at any given moment, I can just pick up one of my DS systems, turn on the game, and pop in Pokemon Black version. And I get a chance to see what my team was back in the day. And I noticed that I used a Hydreigon in my first playthrough, and it instantly provoked me to think about one of the first memories I had of Hydreigon, and that was that I remember people talking about how it was a quote-unquote copy of Red Eye's Black Dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! And so that instantly clicked in my mind as a perfect thing to reference in the Hydreigon verse.
Send it to the graveyard better than any other Red Eyes Black Dragon can.
Some of the other things I have written in my document here are pop my collar, burn your whole village, I'm a count to 3, 1, 2, 3. It's the Hydra's Gen, Hydrogen. I'm a world champ and I'll win the pennant, but no repentance. You'll be saying penance. Hydro, plain and simple, that's how I slide. Why did I write that?
No repentance for this devilish degenerate who's entering the meta game with gems on his neck and wrist. Just call me
Obviously, gems are a reference to just jewelry and being rich, like, you know, rappers like to brag about. But gems, particularly, are items that were introduced in Generation 5, and there was a gem for each type, and it allowed you to power up a move of that type once the item was consumed. Hydreigon with the Dragon Gem and Draco Meteor was one of the most powerful beings to be reckoned with in the Gen 5 metagame. Just call me World Champion. If you didn't know this, in 2011 at the Pokemon World Championships, the first place player in the VGC Junior Top 2 used a Hydreigon, and the first place player in the VGC Master Top 8 used a Hydreigon. So, just call me World Champion, and then obviously bring in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference we talked about earlier.
I call it tyranny, I call it sympathy, you call it villainy, I call it dignity. When I be ripping the villages, opening up heaven's gates of infinity, I bring the agony to get to his enemies like I was in the garden of Gethsemane. Know that when you say a prayer to the Trinity, it's from epiphany that you will think of me.
If you didn't know this, Hydreigon is based on the Yamata no Orochi, which is a Japanese myth. It is a legendary serpent in Japanese folklore that has 8 heads and 8 tails. So the numbers don't match up because it would kind of be ridiculous for a Pokemon to have 8 heads. In the myth, they use some gates to quell the monster's threat when he comes to visit. And so that was another way to tie in a reference to Gates to Infinity. They also cut the dragon into pieces, which ties perfectly in at the end of the verse where I say these other rappers try to throat chop at my neck. So there's a lot of talk with numbers here, but the one number that really sticks out is how many wings are on Hydreigon's back, and that's 6. So obviously, just look at the guy, his color scheme, his eyes, his Pokédex descriptions, everything points to it being some kind of devilish character, right? And with that number of wings, number 6, I found an opportunity to really lean into that and build a whole arc around it. And in the Pokédex entry for Pokemon Sword, there are a slew of stories about villages that were destroyed by Hydreigon. It bites anything that moves. So picture it in your head, right? Before you write it, you have to picture it. It's just like Hydreigon, it's like, you know, entering a village, ripping everything apart, and then leaving thinking that it did something just. And that made me immediately think of Thanos from Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, where he has that mindset about snapping half of the population. He thinks it's for a just cause. And so that immediately brings up this concept of, like, you know, you call me evil, but I call it doing good. And what words can fit into that? Obviously, they're not going to dictate the rhyme. The word that does dictate the rhyme for me is village, right? So illage, Pillage is kind of overplayed, so let's try to think of other short I sounds that can fit into a fast rapping sequence. Village, villainy, tyranny, sympathy, dignity, ripping up villages, infinity, gates to infinity. So you see how it all clicks now? Something that I have written before, gates to infinity, is now finding itself fitting directly into this puzzle. When they be ripping the villages, opening it up, heaven's gates to infinity, I bring the agony to Gethsem's enemies like I was in the garden of Gethsemane. Okay, so hold up. So I'm keeping this religion train rolling, right? There's something in the Bible that tells the story of Jesus's agony in the garden. And that particular garden's name was the Garden of Gethsemane. And he was apprehended by the people who Judas, his betrayer, ratted him out to. So I'm likening Hydreigon to Judas by being the person that brings agony to the garden, brings agony to the village. And it just so happens that the name Gethsemane sounds an awful lot like Gethsem's enemies. Gethses being the main villain from Pokemon Black and White who uses a Hydreigon on his team. I wrapped that segment in a neat little bow with the second of 3 references to Hydreigon's 3 heads. Know that when you say a prayer to the Trinity, not only being the Holy Trinity meaning 3, but the Holy Trinity is one of 3 parts that compose of God, right? God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Trinity itself. So it's no epiphany, right? Epiphany, like a religious realization, that you will think of me when you think of the Holy Trinity. The way that I delivered that line, you will think of me, happens to be a small reference to Better Call Saul and a famous speech that Ignacio Varga had just delivered around the time that I wrote this verse. So I was thinking of it, it was fresh in my head. It was just like pure like hatred, and I wanted to channel that for a character that is so dark. It's just funny to me that with mine being a subtle Better Call Saul reference, that there is an actual more direct reference to Breaking Bad earlier in the cipher, and we'll touch on that later. Wrapping up this verse of mine are 2 other things that I had written independently of where they were placed.
The most brutal of the pseudos, but I'm through to, I'll be changing the titles to black and blue, y'all.
Obviously, Hydreigon is from the game Pokemon Black and White version. His color scheme is black and blue, and also being black and blue is the result of being beat up. So I wanted to use that wordplay. And I also found a way to sneak in Hydreigon's Pokédex classification as the brutal Pokemon. And of course, the third and final reference to the 3-headed dragon is how I likened it to a Hydra, whose heads grow back when they get chopped off.
Other rappers try to throw chop at my neck, but this Hydra keeps getting ahead and ahead and ahead.
So these other rappers try to throat chop. Throat chop is a Pokemon move that Hydreigon can learn that disables the opponent from using sound-based moves like rapping. This Hydra keeps getting ahead and ahead and ahead. So when people try to knock me down, I just keep getting further. Also, when they try to chop off Hydreigon's neck, he just keeps growing another head and another head and another head. So that's my verse. I hope you guys loved it. I also appreciate the response to the fast rapping part, and I thought that that was important for me to include because of how menacing this character is. I hope that you got a feel for that. So I hope you look forward to more Cypher verses from me, and also some more similar things like that on my channel. But obviously, I was not the only rapper in this cipher, so let's quickly go through all of the other verses and see what I liked most about them.
16 hours, a circle over the globe. Fly as hell, I might as well set a fire right to your home. You see my pupils enlarging, I'm scorching and fire starting. My skin is orange, no doubt I go harder than Charizard. Sending shots.
I thought Ethan Ross was a fantastic opener. His voice really commands your attention right off the bat. I thought it was a natural fit for Dragonite. My favorite part of his verse is when he breaks it down a little bit and he says, "What's the Draco even for? Hit with Draco Meteor." I also appreciate the references to circling the globe, the comparison to Charizard and his orange skin, because obviously Charizard is picked over Dragonite in popular media. Charizard has the Mega Evolutions, the Gigantamax. Dragonite still has not been given a new form, so it was nice to channel that underdog energy there.
Talk about the goat, watch the money move. Look up on my chain, yeah, I came from the green and blue. Trying to snatch these 2-4s, 8 up on your body, dude. If they talking T-Tar, and you know they talking about the meta too.
Calling him T-Tar was really nostalgic for me. I really like that part. It's really hard not to vibe with his energy level that he brings in. It's like half threatening, half funny, and I really dig it. He was great as Sharon, and this has similar energy to it. And he has a lot of accusatory lines in here, like shiny Blastoise, come and play, see the 9 flash, talking about like shooting shiny Blastoise. I guess shiny Blastoise is like green and blue, and he referenced that earlier as Tyranitar's colors, so maybe he's drawing a parallel there.
Then they're so damn leader, I'll take my mind into war. The Alpha Omega be in my maximum form. Big massive fangs of I'm torn with adamantium claws. I'll Salamanca him, he's leaving out the man that he was.
Connor Quest was a great pick for Salamence because he has this more edgy feel to him. Everything Gen 3 just reeks of cool. Salamence and Metagross have that. The Alpha Omega be in my maximum form. He's talking about receiving Mega Evolution in Oras. I'll Salamanca him, he's leaving half the man that he was. So this is a reference to Breaking Bad and the Salamanca family of the cartel in that show. I won't spoil it because it's one of the best moments in the franchise, but there is a moment where one of the Salamancas turns one of the other main characters into half of a person. So I'll leave that as it is. I love his Sudoku reference. He's using 9 as the number in Sudoku, but also as a gun. And I love the next line that he uses as a bridge. You can't put 2 and 2 together, like, because Sudoku is a numbers game, so you need to be able to put 2 and 2 together. I think when he references keep him tucked under the garms, he's talking about how Mega Salamence's hands withdraw into his body to fly faster. What I really love about Connor's verse is that Salamence as a Pokemon is uniquely baked in with a sort of inspiration, right? That, you know, Bagon wants to fly, he keeps jumping off cliffs and falling on his head, he can't do it. So one day in the future, Bagon swears he will grow wings and fly. And that is the mantra, but also literally the ending line of Connor's verse, and it is just perfect.
In this metaverse, I'ma get up to set it first. A flash skin is easy to show you how the Beretta works. You know that of a robot who always stay in the red alert. A laser focus signal beam in the red eye with metal burst.
One great verse after the other, Diggs comes in and he has that Metagross energy, right? He digs in there deep. Also, this is one of the very few characters in the cipher that is not a dragon. The only other non-dragon is Tyranitar, who is still reptilian. So this Metagross has like the most unique opportunities to make punchline. Laser focus signal beam and a red eye like the sight on a gun, but also Metagross's red eyes. I also love how he references Independence Blue Cross Insurance with the cross on Metagross's face. But notice how Metagross's cross is silver, but when it's shiny, it's blue. And so he bakes that into the line so that it makes sense, right? Fear, shiny, this is about to be a huge loss. I also like his line, give a new meaning to the phrase, get your palm read. So Metagross being a psychic type can read your palm, but also, you know, your palm would be red from blood if you get shot by Metagross, so it's a cool wordplay.
I'm saying, it is gross to leave me out the meta. These other dudes were just substitutes for me until I said if the sword stands, a chance of leaving breathing is bad. When the Dragon Claw sight swipes a literal stab.
Cam has my other favorite verse in this cipher. I love Cam's like schoolyard energy. He just reminds me of like the kids I used to play Pokemon with when I was younger, and now he's a kid I play Pokemon with in the present, so it's just a nice little full circle thing for me. But anyway, he loves Garchomp. It clearly shows in this verse. He has so many references to Garchomp's moves, but also his battle style and his prowess and particular strategies in the metagame, which I love. I love that he says that other dudes were just substitutes before him until he set it up. Obviously, you set up a substitute, but Garchomp was like the dragon when he came around, like the dragon to complete all dragons. I love the literal stab line, stab being an acronym for same type attack bonus, but also his sharp claws. Fast as a blackbird plane. Cam was telling me that he just like looked up what the fastest jet engine was or something like that, and he found the blackbird plane, and it just happened to rhyme perfectly with dirt breaks, surf waves, blackbird plane. When I'm veiled by the sand, you may land in a tomb, sand veil. I outrage in the boot, dual chop. And then my favorite part of Cam's verse is how he harps on this whole shark motif, right? So I'm the Meg of this movie, right? He's not just talking about the Mega Evolution, he's talking about Meg the shark. And then there's another movie reference here with the Jaws theme. Game Shark sweeps. Game Shark is that old cheating device from back in the day. I love the mirror rhyming that he's doing here. Want me, mockery, mock speed, like it's an awesome little pocket. I love what he did with this verse.
Movement is a city car drip when I walk. They throw me right into the battle just to graph them in chalk. Know the victories are sure whenever I show up. Don't believe me, let's see you face this hydro pump.
Black Diamonds, I think I'm saying his name right. I like his verse because he has this sort of like lazy, wobbly style of delivery that I think is perfect for Gudra, who is just like, you know, like dripping while they're walking, literally, as he says in the first line. Not too much like wordplay, but it's more about the movement. It's more about the motion, and it feels very gelatinous, sort of like Gudra's body, Gudra's texture. My favorite part has to be his last line. Like, that was drowning in muddy waters like a public toilet. That really came out of nowhere because he wasn't really doing any lines like that leading up to it. So it was a real like shock to hear that, and it's just like one of those gag laugh moments that I really liked.
You look weak through this body armor I see through. You need cheap moves to compete with these Z moves. Clanger with soul blaze, unique sync with a sweet boost. Drain punch and belly drum beat until I defeat you.
954 Mari, I really digged his energy in this verse as well. It felt really fitting for Komo'o, who's like this tropical island kung fu dragon type thing. Like, it really worked, and my favorite part of his verse was, call me Komo'o, golden glow, top of the totem pole, overcoat, weather the rain and attacks from so-and-sos. You have to commit to that kind of rhyme scheme if you're gonna do that, and I feel like he did commit to it, and he saw it throughout the couplet, which I really liked. It really paid off in that moment. I also really like how he just referenced a lot of the unique things about Komo'o. It kind of reminded me how unique of a Pokemon he is, and the different treatments that he got with the scales on his body, dueling as like armor, but also like something musical as well was really cool. I also love the line where he says, your sounds don't faze me, your bullets just graze me. Komo'o's two abilities are bulletproof and soundproof, so that line is just perfect. The move pool base, the blaze been crazy. Nerfing my HP, guess the game did change me. So blaze is a reference to Komo'o's move Clangorous Soul Blaze, which was a Z move in Ultra Sun and Moon, and now, since Z moves are not in Generation 8 anymore, they gave Komo'o a new move in Generation 8 called Clangorous Soul, which is non-damaging, so it does not do hit points, HP. They're nerfing my HP. I guess the game did change me. So people say the game changed me as like a life thing, but the game did change Komo'o when they got rid of Z moves, so there you go.
Been an infiltrator, run up on you in your own home. Want smoke, come the top to pull the Draco out, then go ghost. You bozos ain't nothing to me. You never beat me, even if I devolve 2 times. Back to Dreepy.
And Breton Boy comes in to close out the show. Always love his verses. I love his delivery because there's something like, I don't know, like there's something that makes me smile about it, you know? He references Infiltrator, one of Dragapult's abilities, run up in your own home, infiltration. I'll go ghost like Danny Phantom because he's the dragon ghost type of the pseudo-legendaries. I think devolving back 2 times into Dreepy is a funny reference, but it's also relevant to the character because Dragapult has Dreepies in his canons. I'll admit I was surprised to see that he devoted 3 lines to just repeating one rhyming word, but he owns it. I think that it works for his style. Like, I would never do that. Like, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work in my voice. But it does for him. Champion status, so Dragapult is used by the champion in the game, and a good reference to Darkest Day to close out the whole cipher, because in a lot of these, Generation 8 has the unique distinction of being the end of the song, so you have to do something that justifies the song ending, and I think he does it here, which is awesome. I hope you guys liked that cipher. I hope you guys stay tuned for the next one. Whatever Cam decides to do, I know he's still working on it right now. I will be making some new stuff. I have to say, I probably have made more rap songs in the past that could hold you over for weeks upon weeks, but I hope you like fire types. I'm Mat4yo, and that's all for you today.
I'm not your commodore, I'm a modern era rap commodore. Out of this world like a commodore, meteor. Been fresh before, I walked through the Abercrombie doors. Now they smell that commodore, everyone wants the commodore. You want homophones? Yeah. If I'm gonna be honest, bro, I don't need to Google them and look them up on my phone. I already got oodles of Google.